Greetings, new hammer, middle hammer, and old hammer folks alike. I am OldGrumpyWolf, aka Lennon Midnight, and welcome to the Minibar Podcast. I'll be serving you up lots of awesome painting nerdiness, talking to other painters from around the web. Tonight we have a very, very special guest. Some of you guys may know him from, well, pretty much all the box art from second edition Warhammer 40,000. We have the man himself, Tim Prow. Welcome to the show, dude.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on.
No problem.
And did you just, you and I were talking previously, did you just get back from the gym?
This morning, yeah, did 1,000 reps, so that was fun.
Oh, you're a morning gym person.
I am on Wednesdays. Most of the time it's evening stuff though.
Oh, okay. I don't know how people do that in the morning.
It's 9:30 in the morning. It's a bit of a stretch, but I've got some friends who come in, so it's a good laugh.
You've got kiddos, so I'm assuming you're up probably a couple hours earlier than I am.
Yeah, well, it's a bit tricky. This last week and this week it's the kids' holidays at school, so my daughter's off.
Was it like spring break?
I guess so. Yeah, it's some kind of term break. I guess it's for Easter and stuff. So. Oh
yeah, so what we call here in the U.S. spring break.
Yeah. Previous Easter, obviously. Now we're going to be in the future, aren't we?
And I love how Easter just randomly jumps around. Sometimes it's in April, sometimes it's in January.
Yeah.
Never been a fan of that holiday in particular. I think mainly it was because when I was young, we always went to my grandma's house for Easter, and she always made ham, and I hate ham.
Tricky. It's usually Easter egg hunts and stuff around the garden.
Oh, okay.
And then we miss an egg here and there, and then the rats have got something to chew on. Yeah, it's quite festive.
And I like how you're wearing a Sin City shirt.
Yeah.
Given I'm in Vegas, it's always kind of nice to see that from other parts of the world. I'm assuming behind you that's your miniatures case.
Yeah, we've got two. I've got one over there and one behind me as well. And
is that the to your right? Is that the Never-Ending Space Hulk diorama?
Yes. I'm scared to pick up the laptop in case we get disconnected.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was going to say you've got pictures of it on Instagram.
So it will end one day, or I will end one of the other.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into it. The first question of the show that I ask everybody is, what got you into the hobby and miniature painting?
A friend. He was collecting. He only had like 2 or 3 models, and I think there was an Imperial Dragon Tom Meyer had made, but it was through the Citadel collection.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they were so cool. So I must have gone into town and went to Games Workshop and picked up a couple of figures. I mean, you think these days that they were dirt cheap, they're only like 60 pence or something, but to a kid back when he was 13, it probably was a bit of my pocket money. So, yeah, I've still got 1 or 2 of them at the moment somewhere.
Well, I mean, God, back then, Games Workshop's pricing structure was a lot different and a lot more affordable.
Yes. Yeah. And metal costs were cheaper. I mean, the metal prices have gone up so much these days.
Well, they were primarily using, they initially started with pewter and then just kind of went into a hybrid metal like in the late 90s and 2000s.
I think it was quite lead kind of, because there was a certain stage where was it bismuth, or there was some use of some metal that now is like lead rot, so the figures are now crumbling. I've got one figure that I had that's been in White Dwarf, one of the centaurs I'd made using the Chimera body, mm-hmm. and the top half is fine, but the Chimera body has started to rot.
I think I know what miniature you're talking about. Did he have like a snake arm?
This one had a long lance. I've separated him from the others so he doesn't send his corruption to the rest of the Chaos Warband. And
that lead rot, is that when the metal starts turning just like pure white?
Yeah, it starts crumbling. I looked at it. I mean, it's painted figure, and mm-hmm. the fur, it's just, you can just see this like a grey pattern starting to come on it. And I think if you brush it, it'll just like flake away.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about. I have like 1 or 2 miniatures that are starting to kind of do that.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, really. But yeah, most of my other ones are good, thankfully.
And now you had to been what, in your early teens when you started getting into this stuff?
Yeah, I was 13 when I started painting.
Oh wow!
Humbrol enamel paints.
Oh,
good stuff. I can still smell it.
Oh yeah. No, there was at my local shop that I go to, War Room. There's on Monday night, one of the guys that was on my show, the Dork Depot, he runs a hobby night there, and there's this young kid, I think he's 12 or 13. He comes down, and his dad, the kid got into Warhammer. His dad bought him a whole bunch of 40K stuff, the new plastic stuff, and his dad wound up giving him his old tester paints. And the kid's sitting at the table with us. He's painting with tester paints, and we're just sitting there going, "Whoa, woo!"
Smell that a mile off.
Oh yeah, I mean that little dude's in it, like he's up in his room painting with these things, and it's like, "Whoa, dude!" Yeah, and he was actually
quiet tonight, isn't he?
Yeah,
I wonder why.
one of the guys at the table actually ended up giving him a bunch of I think like all of his Citadel paints he doesn't use, and the kid got like 40 or 50 paints, and I mean his eyes were just. Oh, so he's not sitting around sniffing tester's paint anymore.
yeah. That's a fortune in paints, isn't it? Games Workshop, 50 parts, crikey.
So you started painting around the 13, 14. That's kind of leading into we can go with the next question is how did you come to work at Games Workshop, and for our younger viewers, what was your role there?
I had somehow gotten in with, I guess, some of the people at the local store, and it was I don't know, maybe 100 yards, 200 yards away from the paint studio.
Oh wow!
So I got in with them, and I think I just sent a little letter in. I got my mum to help me because I was only like 15 at the time. I sent a letter, and I think it was John Blanche replied saying, if you want to come during your Christmas holidays from school, you can join the heavy metal team and do some painting. So I went into the studio when I was a kid and painted for a couple of weeks during Christmas.
And so, like, when you started, like, my understanding of your history there was that you started and you were really good, and McVeigh wound up taking you under his wing.
Yeah, I wasn't brilliant at all. I was today's standards. I would have been. Yeah, I wouldn't have had a chance.
Let's not talk about today's standards.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
They're unreasonable beauty quality standards.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we have to try and produce a figure, well, paint a figure in a day, and the kind of stuff that they're doing must take weeks or craziness. But while I was there, that was later on when I joined properly when I was 17. And Mike McVeigh was one of the leading painters there. There was a few other lads. There was Andy Craig, Ivan Bartlett, Phil Lewis, and Dale Hurst.
Yeah, and, I remember Ivan and Dale from the Fantasy Miniatures book.
Yeah, they were previous like Golden Demon winners and stuff, and I came in a lowly painter that had never won any competitions, but I'd never entered any competitions.
So my what I've gathered, and I mean this kind of goes into a later question, but we might as well talk about it now. I read somewhere that, and maybe I asked you that, from the transition from Rogue Trader to second edition, pretty much all of heavy metal painters were made redundant except for you and McVeigh. And you guys wound up creating all the style guides for all the Space Marines, for all the orcs. You both wound up painting the bulk of the miniatures that were used on the box art, in the painting guides. And it was like a year or two into second edition where they started bringing on more people to heavy metal. to kind of fill out the roles, so that way, you know, you two weren't holding the brunt of everything.
Pretty much. I mean, when we were moving from Enfield Chambers to Castle Boulevard, and we had quite a good team going on, but they all called us in one by one to Phil Gallagher's office, and each person that came back, their head was down and they were upset, and I was like, oh, sugar. So I went, I got called in. I got called in, and I went along, and Phil Gallagher was basically, don't worry, you know, you're fine, and Mike McVeigh as well, obviously. So we both survived. We just finished, everyone would just finish packing all the painted figures, because at this point Brian had sold the company off, and part of the deal was he kept all of the painted figures. So everything from the start of Games Workshop to that point just went off to Brian Ansell's place. So yeah, we packed all the office up and moved to Castle Boulevard, and it was just me and Mike. He would pretty much get all the commander figures and the choicest ones, and I was given like the units, and we carried on for a while. We kept getting people in from the shops. Their shop painters would come in and help out with like painting some stuff and getting army things together, because obviously there was nothing to put in White Dwarf. There was no battle reports because there were no painted figures. Trying to think what I was painting.
So that was kind of why White Dwarf was like a little barren of 40K stuff for I want to say like a year and a half. Yeah,
at least. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, as new things got released, we'd need box art, so we'd paint up the latest figures. I seem to remember doing a lot of Blood Angels, Ultramarines, and Space Wolves. And yeah, we just mucked in and got on with it, really.
So you were responsible for pretty much like all the box art minis. Because they were one of my favorite sets of minis. Were you the one responsible for doing the old Deathwing Terminators?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Painted a lot of those up. I just seem to remember a lot of Space Wolves at the time. There was a lot of stuff going on.
It seemed like the Space Marines were out of all the armies, and 80 brought this up when I talked to him last week, that the miniatures for box art were pretty much the only miniatures that could be used in the battle reports, and the Orc army was lacking a lot of miniatures that were sculpted. They were just never painted. There's a picture on the back of one of the old White Dwarfs I found, where it was the old, like the in-between Blood Angels army, where you had RTB-01s, RTB-15s, the Thud gun, I think a Predator, and then the opposing force was Orcs. And they were all painted up like I think they were blood axes. They were all in gray fatigues. And I think this is before the switch over to Goblin green base rims being standard, because I think all the Blood Angels were painted with Goblin green base rims, and then the Orcs had like Dark Angel or Orc Flesh green bases. I wish I dug it out before the show. I didn't think I'd talk about it. But no, like even like your RTB-15 Marines were in there back when the squad you did was just flat colors.
Yeah, that was it was this weird stage. John Blanche was like promoting it, where we had to paint very flat, no blending, no ink wash, just flat colors. It was around the same time, was it the Gene Stealer cult with the orcs and stuff? And we just hated it. We thought it was stupid and patronizing. It was almost like, we should paint to the standard that the kids in the stores can paint. And it was like, no, because they look up to us to see the patterns and the colors, and they want to become better painters. So why paint it flat?
So I like this kind of segues into another question that I had. We touched just a little bit on it, was kind of what happened between Rogue Trader to second edition as far as like painting standards. Were you and Mike, writing the style guides for, or developing and writing the style guides for, Space Marines and Orcs going forward? Basically a lot of the stuff that was used in how to paint Citadel miniatures and how to paint Space Marine or Warhammer 40,000 minis. The old paint books.
Yeah, Mike was doing a lot more of the writing. I don't know whether he wanted to or not, but he was taking on that role. Certainly after some of the previous team left. I was just a spotty kid. They would not have wanted me writing. It would have been crap. So sometimes Mike would ask me what color schemes I'd used and what paints and stuff, and I'd help as much as possible. But a lot of the report was Mike writing them up.
Okay. Well, did you and him kind of work side by side to develop all this stuff?
A lot of the color schemes were already decided for us. Certainly with Space Marines, it's this is the color, this is what you do, these are the badges. I think Jez Goodwin had quite a lot of input. Okay. The banners that we did, we would go up to Jez and he would design a banner for us, and we would just use the photocopier to shrink it to the right size. And then we'd paint it. So all of those ones that were in White Dwarf, you'd see the unpainted version and then the painted version. And that's what we were doing. We were just transferring it and photocopying it down.
It's nuts that just how different things are, just how much they evolved from Rogue Trader all the way up until, I want to say, even now. I think one of the things that I miss most about modern 40K is seeing the banners on all the different troops. That's, you still have standard bearers here and there, and you still have some banners that are sculpted to the mini, but I don't know, it's just a very different feeling than the old paper banners, especially the ones that you and Mike designed up or that Jess designed up from second edition.
It feels like it's cheating. I look at these plastic banners that have already got embossed artwork on there. It's like, that's cheating. Come on.
It kind of makes it a little bit more convenient. I mean, I remember I came in, I got in when, I was like 10 or 11. So I'm 43 now. So that was let's say 22, 23 years ago. I'd gotten in before the second edition backpacks with the banner poles were a thing, and you guys were making them from scratch. Like on the only one that comes to mind that pops into my head right now is the Ultramarine, just the normal tactical squad box set where you had the metal pins on the captain's backpack that were glued together, and you had a more square banner on there. And I think you did the same thing for some of the Blood Angel stuff. Yeah,
we were like soldering wire together just to make the backpacks.
Oh wow! Yeah, there was a plastic banner pole for the late model Rogue Trader backpacks that I think you had to glue on separately, and they was just like so thin. You tried to cut it out, and the thing just snap in half. Yeah. No, to me, it's actually really nuts sitting here talking to you, because there's like so much of what you and McVeigh did to me and so many other people. I mean, you kind of founded our childhoods and teenage years for the models that we looked up to and that we so wanted to replicate. And you mentioned just a little while ago that, like, painting standards now like are just off the charts, but it's actually funny. I was talking to I can never remember his name. His real name is Mike. I was talking to him. He was one of my guests, and I mean, dude he's multi-time Nova winner back east. The guy is insanely good. And we were talking about painting and how, like, the display stuff, the miniatures that take higher end painting competition awards, there's a lot of Grimbright in what they do. And I've noticed that a lot of like younger guys now, they don't like Grimbright style from the 90s very much. I think it's mainly because they don't understand it. But the funny thing is, when you get to that insane level of unrealistic beauty standards of painting. There is a lot of like what you and Mike established in that painting, in that like non-metallic metallics. You have to get really bright, really bold, really vivid. The same thing with armor. You know, you want to call attention to the head of the miniature, or let's say he's got a plasma pistol and you want the glow to come off that onto the arm and the shoulder pad. A lot of that is actually grim bright painting, because you're going really bright, bold, vivid colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in the old days, we just painted metallics metallic. There was
I still use metallics,
shimmers and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it would be weird to change now. And half my collection, certainly the one in the never-ending diorama, it would be a bit weird to suddenly change. I mean, I started painting that probably around 91. Mm-hmm. So to suddenly change now to a different style would be weird.
So I've actually got a personal question. You obviously remember the old RTB-15 Mark 7s. Mm-hmm. Why were the arms changed for second edition?
No.
I thought maybe you and Jess might have had a conversation about that.
It wasn't my fault. I didn't choose it.
I'm sure you didn't. Just I've got the RTB-15s were like my unicorn Marines growing up. There's a story behind it, but I won't get too far into it. Or it's just kind of a long one. But the arms that the RTB-15 Mark 7s had were just so superior to the second edition arms, and it's still to this day it drives me nuts. The turn them around, there we go, like the right arm where the right arm was always a 90-degree bend, like straight forward or across the body. And the straightforward one, if you wanted to fit any weapon, like any bolter, any pistol, anything on there, you had to shave down the back of the gun, and then you had to shave down the shoulder pad. And it's like, did you guys not test this before you did it?
No, it was just put together, and then you're trying to get the shoulder pad on properly and make it sit right. And it was lots of like trimming and cutting and making it look good.
So another really good question that I had in my brain that I thought of that I really wanted to ask was, why was painting during Rogue Trader era so all over the place?
Probably because there was no kind of rules to keep it like chapter approved. You've got to do this. You can't go off in this direction. You can't write silly words and stuff on it and do all sorts. It was a lot freer. I think it became a lot more tight and restrictive in the later years.
So it was basically just because it was the start of everything. Yeah,
I think so. I think they were still finding the way. Since I left, it all became very religious with all the brotherhood, and it's like it wasn't like that when I was there, but it was going in that direction.
There was one question that I asked 80 that I had on my mind for so long. It used to drive me nuts. I asked him, I'm like, why was it in White Dwarf and the painting guides and everything in the battle reports? Was it a rule that you couldn't show the back of the miniature? And he's like, yes, it was. It always drove me nuts because, like, as a kid, you always see the face. Well, in the 90s, you always see the face at the fronts of the models, but you had no idea what the backs look like, and just
I guess it was something you wouldn't do in photography if there was like a battle report. You had to always like try and wangle it so they were facing forwards. You never have a miniature with its back to the camera.
Well, it seemed like toward the later 90s, that rule had kind of gone away. There's one battle report, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just know the picture. There were some Ultramarines with jump packs on, and they were actually they showed a bunch of the Marines from the back. I think they were fighting Eldar or Orcs, but it was just like, oh, that's what they look like.
I've got some photos. I'm going to put it up at some stage on Instagram of the old Dark Angels diorama that I did at the time. And I've got photos of the back, and I suddenly realized the other day when I actually took it out and looked at it that I have painted the back of his cloak and everything. So
Oh, okay.
It's going to be nice to see these photos from behind, because when it was in White Dwarf, you only saw the front of it. So,
you mentioned that Brian Ansell took a bunch of that stuff with him when he left. Do you actually have any of your old studio miniatures?
nope.
So
They all went. Yeah, anything that I've got was painted at home, and yeah, I don't think I've ever given any away. So I've still got my original collection. So whatever's in White Dwarf that was from my personal collection, I still have.
So Games Workshop basically they kept all the second edition stuff.
Yep, everything went.
Because I know there was some people that took studio models with them when they left, but it seems
I think that was later.
Yeah, it seems kind of hard to track down who took what. As I've always been very curious, like to get higher res photography of, the stuff that you and McVeigh painted up in the early days. Yeah,
I mean, maybe you could go along to Brian's estate, because they've got the family runs a foundry, and they've still got all the painted figures in cabinets.
Is that the shop in the UK that displays models? Okay. So that's probably how they got a hold of the whole Gene Stealer cult. Yeah.
If you go down, there's an event called Boil, Bring Out Your Lead, and they hold it at least once, maybe sometimes twice a year, and you can go along. It's in Newark. It's near to Nottingham.
Okay.
And you can go and look at all the stuff. It's all in cabinets. Everything that he took is there.
Okay. Yeah, I ran across somebody who'd gone into the store and had taken figures in the display case. Or I'm sorry, taking pictures of the figures in the display case. And at the time, they had the whole Rogue Trader era Gene Stealer cult, including the limousine. Yeah. They had a couple of the RTV 15 Marines that you guys painted up for the box art. And I'm like, how did they get a hold of these? Because I thought maybe I'd read different things, like people had bought collections from Games Workshop and collections from other people, like including Jess Goodwin and stuff like that. And so at least now there's clarity to that story.
Yeah, nothing left Brian's hands. So anything that he got when he sold the company, he kept.
Oh, okay. So
it's all there. So you can go and photo. I'm sure you could sort something out with them.
Yeah, I've been dying to go to Warhammer World to see, supposedly they have stuff from second and third edition in the display cases. I've been really curious to go see that.
Yeah, it's always funny. I think it's the first area of the entrance as you go through and do the walkthrough.
Oh, that's all the classic stuff?
I painted that.
That's got to be kind of an odd feeling. Like I here in Las Vegas, I've run art departments for vehicle wrap shops for since 2000. The first one I got into was 2006, and I was appointed art director really quickly. And it's always kind of weird to kind of like I did that, seeing your work floating around town on vehicles. I wound. Go ahead.
No, that's cool.
I wound up doing I ran my last place I was at. I left in 2023, but I was there for 11 years. The owner and I are still like really good friends and stuff. There was no animosity. I just needed to leave. But I wound up actually doing the design for the Henderson Police Department out here. So, like tons of cops running around Henderson. I'm the one who did that, and I'm sure there's someone going to be yelling at me, "You did that? I hate those cops."
You might get a free get out of jail free card or something.
There was quite a few of those. We were both the owner, like all of us at the shop. We were all in the cars, so we did some dumb things. And when the cops got involved, they're like, "Oh, we know who you are. You guys are okay."
Very good.
So get out of jail free card, definitely. This is another one that I've always wondered about.
I remember the Gene Stealer cult, because we were given these toy kind of die-cast cars to use as the cult cars. Yeah, I think Dale got one and I got one, and I just struggled. I was not from that kind of design kind of background, so I think my car, which was an abomination, was given to Ivan. So he finished it for me because I was just struggling. So yeah, that's what
I gotta
happened.
move
for
my
mine.
chair. There we go. I'm missing a caster off my chair. I sat down a couple nights ago and it just snapped. I'm like, great, I got to go buy another $150 chair. This is awesome.
Yay.
Yeah, one thing I've always been curious about is, and I've kind of heard mixed stories about this. While you were at Games Workshop in the Eavy Metal department, did you guys exclusively use Games Workshop paints?
We did and we didn't. Most of it was Games Workshop, but I did use Placa Red and Placa Gold because it was just so much richer. There was so much pigment in it.
Yeah.
And we used Winsor & Newton Series 7 brushes. They tried, when they introduced the Games Workshop brushes, they tried to get us to use them, and we said no.
Oh, there was I don't remember the name of the podcast. Peachy used to be on it. They brought in like one of the GMs from Games Workshop. He left I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, and he was actually saying he brought in the red handle brushes, the blue handle brushes, and the black handle brushes, and he said, you know what the difference is between all three of these? And they're like, no, nothing. They're the same brushes. They're all made by Winsor & Newton.
Yeah. Yeah, the early Citadel ones they brought in were crap. I can testify to that. So yeah, I mean, I think I've still got some of the old brushes from the 90s. They are very tufty now.
Are you talking about the old red handles?
No, I might have one somewhere, but no, Winsor & Newton ones.
Okay,
they were brilliant, and I still use them today. They're a lot more expensive, but they are worth it.
I've recently got into using like synthetic brushes, and I'm really big on Monument hobby stuff for a lot of what they produce, and Monument and AK, and I've gotten into using Monument's synthetic brushes, and I've just fallen in love with them. I think they're great.
That's cool. I tried maybe 20 years ago. I tried synthetic. And I found the tips would bend after using them for a while.
Yeah, I found that as well. Like I get a little bit of a bend on the tip, like it's like a little hook. But I've just kind of adapted to that. Like the neat thing is, I found that works really well. Like let's just because you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like let's say you're blacklining a Mark 7 armor, you can actually get that bend to dig into like the crevices of the armor and the detail, and it just stays in there. It doesn't like I found with like the natural fibers, like with straight brushes, they'll get a little pissy sometimes and kind of want to pop out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get that,
they'll start getting a bit tired. Won't they?
Yeah.
Just like one will just go off.
Where I found that little hook on the synthetic brushes now. When it locks in there, it don't move. It's actually really I found it good for I was painting up, you saw the sneaky beakies that I painted up, the blood angels, those stupid tubes on their chest, like getting the black lines between each tube worked perfect.
Spot on.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. My final question in here, I'll get back to a couple of these because they're more pertaining to your miniature range, but the last question in the list that I came up with was, are you ever planning on finishing your Space Hulk diorama?
Yes. I think a lot of it comes down to when I get time to, in between jobs. It's like, you know what, I'll paint another Marine, I'll paint another Terminator, I'll get a few more Gene Stealers painted. I think I did the banner guy, the standard bearer last year, maybe, or maybe it was the year before. It all blends into one. But yeah, I'd love to get it done.
How long have you been working on that for?
Since about 91.
Oh, jeez.
The box that it came in, you remember seeing all the other dioramas that they've always had from years and years back. I found one of these boxes when we were moving. This was the brilliant thing about moving. And it was just me and Mike McVeigh. While he was out of the office and I was packing stuff, I was going through the rooms and finding things, and I was like, oh, I'll just keep that for myself. So I kept one of these boxes for myself. I thought, I could use that. So I did. And
those were like, they were just shadow boxes, weren't they? Or did you guys custom build them?
They were custom built. There was a label on the back, and I'm sure I looked at the company, and obviously they don't exist anymore. But yeah, there was a label on the back, so we must have got someone to make them.
Oh wow! So they were like what the wood inside the paneling was kind of predetermined, like where the splits would be.
It was basically just a box with like just a backing on it. There was a piece over the top that would screw in, and just a glass front to it, and it just slid down in a groove.
Oh, I didn't realize they actually had glass on them.
Yeah. So you can pull the glass out, which is what I'm doing at the moment with the one I've got. Because I'm still, when I was sculpting back in the day, back in the 90s, I wasn't the sculptor I am now. So obviously I was just using sand for the grime and stuff. And now I'm using putty. So I'm going back over and reworking it. Okay. So I'm going to be painting it while it's in the box, and it's getting heavier and heavier as more and more miniatures kind of get added to it. Yeah, you had 15, 20 miniatures that are all metal in a diorama, and it's like, oh great, this weighs 10 pounds. It's going to be more like maybe 50 or more figures. You don't think there's that many figures, but then you look and you go, oh, actually there's about 20 or 30 per level. There's 3 levels on it. Since
you've been working on it so long, have you actually had to redo some of the miniatures because your painting style's changed?
No, but you can tell. Oh, well, I can tell which ones were painted when, because I've slightly changed, or I've just not bothered to look at what I've been doing. So I think my Space Marine, the Space Wolf Grey is the same, but it's not. It's changed. It's still the same paint, but maybe I've took it up at a different stage. So maybe it's darker on this one or lighter on the other one.
Are you talking about like actual? Are you actually talking about real Space Wolves Grey?
Yes, yeah, I've still got it. Let's see if I can find it.
I would love another vial of that. The closest the closest thing I found is from. Oh wow! By the way,
where's the camera?
There you go.
Where's the camera?
Your head is dead center on the camera.
There it is. Oh, there.
Oh, that's blue gray. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Space Marine Grey that I use.
Okay. The closest I found I haven't broke. I've all my Citadel paint's dried up because being here in Vegas, it gets really hot. So the room behind me that you can see, it's backwards, over right, all the way, right there. That's my storage room, and I had all my paint stored on the opposite wall from that closet, and the sun hits that wall, so the heat from the sun dried all my paints out. But I ended up ditching a lot of my paint pots recently, but I kept certain colors to use as references, and I haven't compared them, but like just based on my eyeballs and what I have in my display cases from the 2000s. Our Army Painter, War Painter Fanatic actually makes a real close replica of Blue Gray and Space Wolves Gray. The Space Wolves Gray replica is called Frost Blue. And I couldn't find anybody else making that particular color, and it was when I was doing the Space Wolf that's down at the bottom of the screen on the right. When I was doing him for Olden Demon, I was trying to use Citadel Fenrisian Gray, and
no,
too dark,
too light, too dark.
It was too dark, and Citadel's current formula, I am not a fan of at all.
All right. Hopefully this pot will last me.
I think I've got a sealed pot of Blue Gray. Like before it was called Shadow Gray.
I've got a sealed bottle of Chaos Black.
Oh, wow.
And that must be, I don't know, ancient.
And the great thing is
89, 90.
The great thing is it's probably still good.
Yeah. The old pots work fine.
Oh yeah.
I still use Citadel paints now, but I finally dry out. And
the modern ones.
Yeah.
It's the lid design.
Yeah, it gets down to the last centimeter, and it's like if I don't keep adding water to it, it just gets sludgy, and then it just gets rubbery, and that's it. So we were talking briefly during the break, and I actually did want to ask something. There was a game in the 1990s that was like Games Workshop's biggest competitor. It was called Warzone,
And you were heavily involved in that. Just for a little bit of history, how were you involved with Warzone?
Well, when I was leaving Games Workshop, I was taken to one side. They believed I was working for other companies, which I wasn't. But I was still in contact with Phil Lewis, and Phil Lewis was sculpting for Bob Watts at Warzone. So I was suspended for a week while they looked into allegations of me working for other companies, which I wasn't. So during that week, I got in contact with Phil and Bob. Bob says, well, try a test piece, see what you can do. So I came up with a piece during that week, and they accepted it. So when I went back in to have another meeting with my boss, they said, well, we can't find any proof, but we feel we have to take it further. And I just turned around and said, well, look, I'm leaving, so thank you and goodbye. Because I knew I had another job to go to. So it was like, I find sometimes in life it's like a step, and you hit a step, and it's like you have to then get pushed up to go to the next level.
Yeah.
And this was me for sculpting. So I started sculpting Warzone figures, mostly the Undead stuff, and the Brotherhood as well. And it was a learning curve because, these were my first miniatures. Yeah. And I look at them now and I smile because I see all the faults. I think everybody else does as well.
Yeah, we're our own worst critics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see where you try to hide something. It's like, that's abysmal. But I used to paint them as well. So in the magazines and stuff, I'd have probably painted quite a few of them. And my ex-wife, I taught her to paint. She had some skill in it already, but she had a similar kind of paint style as well. So she was painting almost like full-time painter for the company. Yeah.
So did you do a lot of the stuff that was actually in the first edition Warzone rulebook? Like painting-wise?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Painted the, what was the Pope character?
Oh, the guy with the white robe and the sword?
Yes, yeah. I've even got I'll have to show you, I've got a diorama with one of the, is it a mortificator on top of a roof.
You've got one, we'll pull it up on your Instagram in a little bit, but you've actually got one with the samurai looking dudes and then like a big demon looking guy.
Oh yeah, the Mishima. Is it Mark Copleston, I think, sculpted those, and the is it a Nephirite or something?
Yeah, those were second edition Warzone miniatures.
Yeah, that was Kev Adams had done some of those.
Oh, Kev Adams did those?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it was the Japanese ones were Mark Copleston.
Okay. So when the second version of Warzone, I don't know if it was a new rule book or what it was. I just saw the miniatures in a local hobby store in the early 2000s. Were you still painting for them back then? Because I bought the Wolf Banes to paint up.
No. It's weird. We've just done the Salute show in London, and I had to get a box free to put some painted miniatures in for Die Hard miniatures to take down to London. And I was emptying out and I was finding all these Warzone figures that I'd painted back in the day. I'll have to show you those pictures as well at some stage.
I'd love to see those.
Yeah, but they were quite nice.
To kind of roll back into the normal questions of the show, one big question that I ask everyone who comes on is, what kind of paints do you use to paint your miniatures with?
Still Games Workshop, either from the 90s or things like white and black, obviously run out, and silver.
Yeah.
So I use the latest versions from Games Workshop.
How do you?
I'm a simple soul.
Since you're very familiar with old games or old Citadel paints, especially the first and second generations, how do you think modern Citadel paints compared to, the old cylinder, the old cylinder pots, the old hex pots, and then the 2000s paints?
Well, I never got the hex pots. you know,
Oh, just the
that's
cylinder
the
pods.
original paints from the first, and that's the new ones.
Yeah.
So the new versions, they seem to dry out a bit quicker. I have to keep like adding a bit of water just to keep them fluid. But they're nice. They seem to work.
Yeah, I kind of envy you on that. I was getting back into all this stuff. One of my best friends, he recommended me trying Vallejo Model Color. He was really big on that. And so I bought some of those. I really liked them. They reminded me of early Citadel paints from the 80s and the 90s, just with a bit more pigment to them. And then I figured out which paints in Citadel's range were equivalent to what I was used to, which was the layer paints. And I picked some of those up, and I got really frustrated with them. The new acrylic medium they're using, the paints didn't like the glaze. Like, one of my biggest influences outside of you and McVeigh was Kim Seiberg, the guy who did those like god tier Space Wolves way back in the mid to late 90s, and White Dwarf. I spent ages trying to replicate his painting style, and like once I figured it out, it's just kind of stuck. And he used a lot of like glazing with his. He went from like blue gray to up to skull white, and just did really thin glazing coats for highlights. And I found that the modern Citadel paints don't like to do that.
Right.
So I want
start drying on the edges.
It's not necessarily drying on the edges. It was just, I don't know, wet blending with them and glazing with them. They just, maybe I'm just not using them right, or I'm just not used to them. It seems like they're really made for the really thin highlighting that you see on box art now. But I ventured out and started using, I tested out for that Space Wolf that's at the bottom of the screen. I ended up buying a bottle of whatever Citadel's current white is, and a bottle of Pro Acryl titanium white. And I tried the titanium white first, and it worked exactly like the 2000 Citadel formula. So I just took the Citadel bottle, was like, whoop, bye. But it allowed for, it was Citadel's 2000 formula was like they were trying to do as many colors in matte as they could.
Right.
And matte paint seems to, it likes to me at least, it seems to like to glaze and wet blend a little bit better, especially once that matte medium in the acrylic starts mixing in with other colors. So yeah, I mean, seeing your stuff and the way that you work and the way that your highlighting is, I mean, I've based a lot of the ways that I paint around, like I said, you, McVeigh, and Seiberg, and seeing your current stuff that you're using Citadel with is really impressive.
Thank you. What am I using? What are these things? The contrast inky things. I guess they like tell you how to use things and washing them over. I end up like mixing paint into it.
Oh, really?
And I'm using it to get a deeper. So I'll use that and almost like an old orc brown color, like a light tan. And I just like,
there you go. No, toward the center of your face.
Yeah. I use that as a way of getting a nice leather color, and then just add more of the orc brown to it to raise it, and then use white at the end just to finish it off. But it's the contrast. It gives a nice depth to the color.
Orc brown was originally spear staff brown, wasn't it?
Probably.
Oh, okay.
I guess spear staff was in the middle of the section where I didn't collect. Was that a hex paint?
Spear staff, I think, was a cylinder paint, and I think they renamed it to Orc Brown, and then they carried on Orc Brown from there.
The Mizi Desert is what this one's called now, and it's similar kind of Orc Brown kind of color.
Where's my head going? Oh, the contrast. The contrast colors and the shade colors, those were confusing to get back into. I found that the contrast was basically like the old inks.
It's weird. I went to the Warhammer world, and I was looking at this whole shelf of paint, and I was like, dude, I just want white and black. Which one of these is white? I don't want it to do this, that, and the other. I just want it to go on the model.
I just want skull white and chaos black.
Yeah, I'm like looking for an ink. Do you have ink? Well, we have this kind. I'm like, dude, I just want ink. I just, and simple.
It
I don't
sucks that
follow this.
it sucks that most modern there's exceptions to the rule. I got it. But most modern Warhammer stores, you tell them ink and they have no idea what you're talking about. They're like, oh, contrast, no ink, two different things, two very different things. But I do like that.
I've still got rotary inks.
Oh, whoa.
So yeah, and these were borrowed from Games Workshop in the 90s before I left.
Oh, nice.
And they're beautiful. Those inks are.
No, it's weird. It took me a little while to adjust that the modern contrast and the modern shade colors, they don't reactivate. Whereas inks back in the day, you could actually reactivate them. Mm-hmm. And it took a little while to get used to that because I guess the contrast and shade paints have acrylic medium in them to lock them in place once they dry.
Yeah.
And there was one, I forgot who I was talking to about it. They're like, you don't use shade paint. I'm like, no, I stay away from it. It's too thin. I prefer taking the contrast and watering it down to the actual opacity that I want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I might have a shade. What is this? I've got some yellow. Let me see what that does. Glaze. Right, we've got a glaze. I'll just lob that in with red as well, just to get a nice kind of orange when I'm doing rust. I used to use this stuff, and it dries weird, but it looks like really cool rust. But I found that the pot dried out very quickly. It had some kind of chemicals in it, and then I just went back to using inks.
I wonder if that's there. Do you watch Midwinter Minis at all?
No.
They him and his wife. Oh God, they built this like huge. It's got to be at least pushing like 2.5 feet tall. This giant great unclean one. They built it from scratch.
Sweet.
And they were using they have some copper on the great unclean one, like a sword, and they were using this almost like crackle rust paint and crackle weathering material for like the when copper turns blue or teal. Yeah. Such neat paint. It's crazy what they've come up with since the 90s for this stuff.
I know. This I bought it from Green Stuff World, and it had a ball bearing in it, so it must be and it stunk of chemicals.
Oh yeah.
But you rattle it up, and as it dries, it produces like a rust effect, and when it works nicely, it works spot on. But I ran out; it got all goopy and stuff, so I couldn't be bothered to buy any new. So I just went back to using inks.
I will say that I've actually, as much as I miss the old paint pots, I've become a convert to using dropper bottles now.
Yeah.
Well, I think mainly just because the modern Citadel paint pots suck.
Yeah, they do. But, yeah.
I do miss taking paint, off the little lip in the lid.
Yeah. Well, you try and bend the thing back and it just flops forwards.
Oh yeah, it's got that stupid kickstand that works like a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
And then to me, that's like the paint pot is too far open when you have it like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do miss taking water and actually mixing it in the little lip in the lid, to thin my paint out. And I take a couple of brushfuls and put it on my palette and that's it. Whereas like the dropper bottles, you tend to use a little bit more than you should. It's just like, oh crap, I just used half a bottle.
That's probably why I'm still using my old paints from the 90s. I'm just very careful with it and just add a bit of water just to dilute it down again.
Yeah. Just to roll into another question, since you're a good part of this question is, how do you think that 90s Eavy Metal Grimbright style compares to modern day Eavy Metal Grimdark painting style?
I've not really looked at the latest style. I don't really follow Games Workshop. I haven't really followed them since the mid 90s.
Oh, okay.
So I've just gone off on my own direction. I see the new styles of painting on Facebook and other sites, and I'm amazed by the skill that people have these days. I have to kind of remind myself that they probably are standing on the shoulders of giants. So I feel sometimes I'm invisible, so I'll go to a con and I'll be going around going, I'm Tim Prow. I'm Tim Prow. No one knows me, which is kind of fun. It's nice to be invisible, but then sometimes it's like, you know I need to get myself out there a bit more and promote Die Hard miniatures.
Yeah.
And sometimes you are very invisible.
Oh, you just be like
since the 90s, so you know the hair's gone.
Just start introducing yourself. Yeah, hi, I'm Tim McVeigh. Nice to meet you. Tim McVeigh. Yeah, I'm Mike's brother.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't he the bomber as well?
Oh yeah, my bad. Never mind.
Shouldn't be Tim McVeigh. No, maybe not.
Tim Prow.
Mike Prow. Mike Prow. That's it.
Mike.
And then that's my brother. I have an older brother called Mike Prow.
Oh, we're terrible people.
I know. Well, Tim McVeigh was, yes.
Not quite that.
No.
So you've talked a lot about miniature sculpting, and obviously you've done quite a bit of it. You as far as I know, you sculpted a bunch of stuff for Warzone, but what got you into miniature sculpting?
Conversions. We used to convert figures to do, certainly during Realms of Chaos 2, just converting stuff, making it a little bit weirder, a little bit different, and we were encouraged to do that kind of thing. And then it's just small steps from going from like converting a figure to making a full figure. There was me and Kev White at the Castle Boulevard studio, and we would, during the lunch times, we would like try and make figures and stuff, and they would encourage us. They say, make a mold's worth, and then we'll cast them up for you, and you can see how figures work in the mold, which they did do. It was shortly after that I think they just wanted to kibosh the whole thing. So they said, putty's been going missing in the studio, so you're not allowed to do this anymore during your lunch breaks. And that's it. Which was a bit annoying because we were trying to move on and do more stuff. As I mentioned during the break, I mean, when I started, I was on £4,000 a year.
Yeah.
89 that was, and then in 93 when I left, I was on £7,500, and that was the top whack for a figure painter at a Games Workshop. And the only way to change that was to actually learn a different skill, move into something else, and that would have been sculpting for me. But thankfully, Bob Watts was there, and I managed to leave the company and move on. But, you know, I thought I was going to be at Games Workshop forever. I loved the company, and I still love the company for what it's given me. But I felt a bit disappointed in the end. I did feel bad when it was the night of the 1,000 Knives, when they got rid of all the other people when we moved. That was quite upsetting because, I mean, I was only a kid at the time, and all my friends and you know, heroes that I'd worked with were gone.
Yeah, there's something to be said, like when you know, like your favorite people leave, it's a total different environment. Yeah.
I mean, I was still a teenager at the time, and it's like, you know, Phil Lewis is gone.
Yeah.
Ivan and Dale. It was a bit weird.
So you wound up rolling into actually, this goes into another question. I brain farted. So you started sculpting miniatures, but what made you decide to actually start your own miniatures brand? Because that's a bit of a leap.
That is, it's like I said, with the going up a step, you suddenly hit a level and you have to go up to the next level. I'd spoken with a few different sculptors back in 2014, and we were all freelancing for other companies. None of us were doing anything for ourselves, and we decided, you know what, we could use Kickstarter and try and produce our own stuff and see where it goes. And that's how we started Die Hard Miniatures. There was myself, Chaz Elliott, Drew Williams, Richard Long was the concept artist. And it went really well, 2015, but we soon realized that it didn't earn enough to keep everyone happy, and we couldn't make enough money. from it. I thought Chaz would be able to like run it as a boss, but it became clear that it was just too much for everyone to do. I mean, there were two guys in America. There was one guy on a Scottish island, and me in Nottingham. So I thought, yeah, I talked to the guys and I said, look, I'm going to carry on with Die Hard Miniatures next year, and I'm going to do another Kickstarter, and they're all cool with it. So I just carried on, and then maybe 2017, I made the game, the shop, the web store. I think we're now up to 13 Kickstarters now.
Oh, wow.
Since 2015. Yeah, so the company's 10 years old now. I'm just about to run another Kickstarter. This year it's just going to be Fancy Orcs, in the kind of style of the Perry Orcs, which I love, with the long jutting jaws.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit in your sculpting style.
Yes, also the very similar to like Paul Bonner artwork I love his orcs. So yeah, that's this year.
Now, are you using any 3D software to do this, or are you still doing it the traditional way, like via green stuff?
Yeah, all traditional. I used to use green stuff, and then I moved into Procreate, but apparently they've stopped making it now. So I've got my last packet. Patrick Keith sent me a packet. So once that's gone, I'll have to go back to green stuff and maybe brown stuff as well. Which is
and so like for your actual production, you're still spin casting?
Yes, yeah. I use Pete Brown. He's half an hour away, so I drive up, I drop miniatures off, I pick castings up. So it's very convenient.
So when you do let's just say you're sculpting out of green stuff for your master, when you actually mold the miniature in green stuff, is that what you actually continue to make the molds from, or do you spin out a master in metal and use that to cast from?
It's the master. Yeah, it's the metal. So
okay.
I always put pictures up on my the Facebook group. You'll have maybe enough room for 12 cavities on a master mold. You heat the rubber, you put the masters between it, and then you add pressure so it forms around the miniature. Then you let the mold cool and separate it, pull out the masters, and then you cut channels for the metal to pour through. So when it spins, it comes through the center, and then it spreads out into the mold.
So your primary master you make from green stuff, and then what you use for production, for like actually making the production molds, is a metal model?
Yeah, usually something like tin masters.
Okay.
And you'll maybe get 3 castings of the same figure, and then for a production mold, you'll then put that on that production mold, and there'll be 3 copies of the same figure. Okay. So every time you spin it, you'll get 3 copies. Okay.
Yeah, I've been really curious as to how, with what I do with my brand that I'm trying to sell right now, I make body kits for a particular car. And I've learned how the fiberglass production side works. I've learned how the urethane injection molding side works. Also, like high pressure injection, like polystyrene, polyethylene, stuff like that, or polypropylene. But I had no idea how that stuff worked when I was younger. And thinking back, I've started researching it a little bit now. There was a video. There's a company here in the U.S. I think they're in Arizona. But a couple of guys, bigger as Snakeworks Studio says, the top men, they visited this particular facility that produces these miniatures, and they do it for not just, they do it for a wide range of miniature lines. And in-house, they have spin casting, they have high pressure injection molding, and they also have resin. And I never knew that the metal miniatures were made from spin casting, but I mean, initially this whole rant was, I was always curious how they did the master castings, because most of those master miniatures were made in green stuff or a putty of some sort. And it's like, you could probably only cast that once and you wind up breaking it, pulling it out of the mold.
I think it depends on the material and also the caster. Sometimes I get a miniature back and you can't even tell it's been molded. And then other times it's like, here's a bag of your miniature. It didn't survive. But the good thing about the putty I use, I'm able to then convert the figure. So if I do get the master back, then I can do a head swap, a weapon swap, and put it back in. So it saves time. Most of the time, you can't even tell it's been repurposed. And it's what Games Workshop used to do.
I was going to mention
compendiums
that.
And stuff. You look and you think, that's that guy and that guy, and they used to do, I don't know, maybe 10 figures from the same one.
There was there's a lot of orcs and Eldar and Space Marines from early to mid Rogue Trader era, where it's the same body, same pose, but different head, maybe different weapon.
It has been turned a bit. It's got a different weapon, and stick it back in the mold.
There's I think there's a YouTube channel, Wib and something else. I can't remember his gal's name, but he did a comparison video of like a bunch of Rogue Trader Marines that were all, it's the same torso or the same pose, but with different stuff tacked on. You could tell like this. Okay, so this was the originating miniature. They cut the head off. They put a different weapon on him, and they made a different head.
And it's still going on. I mean, I've worked for other companies before, freelancing. And that's the way that they could afford to have someone sculpt. You'd get paid for the original, full price, and then you'd maybe get paid half price for the next conversion, just to fill the unit out.
So with modern tools like modern 3D modeling, what do you think of the whole 3D modeling and 3D printing thing for miniatures?
It's something I think I had a stage in sculpting where I thought, you know what, I've got to decide where I'm going with this. Am I going to continue doing old hammer, old school, or am I going to try and start doing this 3D stuff? And I decided, I made a choice that I thought that there is enough of an audience out there that like old hammer. So I decided to carry on doing traditional. And there's a few of us like Drew Williams as well that still cater for these people. It's a little bit, are we Neanderthal, or are we maybe still catering to the right people that we want to stay with? I mean, it's a decision you have to make. I don't think I'm too old to learn, but it might be another one of those steps where I have to suddenly go up to another level. So maybe when my body starts failing me and stuff, I'll just start 3D sculpting. But the trouble, I think what has happened since then is that there are a lot more people now that are just doing 3D sculpts. And maybe they never traditionally made sculpts, so they're lacking something in their designs. And I think maybe in the future, it's just going to be a saturated market, and there's going to be Chinese sculptors, and they're just going to churn out stuff, and it's just going to be all the same, and you can't tell who made what because it's faceless. Whereas with old hammer, you can tell someone's style. You can tell a Drew sculpt, you can tell a Tim Prow sculpt. So that's the way I've gone. I think it will pay out in the end.
I've gone down the Etsy rabbit hole as far as 3D models, STLs that you can print out, and it's impressive to see what the fan community is doing with 40K stuff. And I'm not really into the fantasy miniature side of things. I've only ever painted up a handful of fantasies, like fantasy battle stuff, usually like gobos and orcs. But for my birthday this year, my gal, she stole one of the Etsy links from me, and ended up buying me. There was 3 female Layman Russ figures that somebody had sculpted up. It was actually 3 different artists, and she bought me all 3 of them. And 2 of them are actually Primark sized. but they're really impressive. And there's a couple of like anime chibi 40K miniatures I want. There's a Sisters of Battle, and she's riding in a rhino with a big steering wheel, and her head's all big. There's this one particular artist did a whole series of chibi 40K stuff, like an orc, Space Marine, Sister of Battle, Imperial Guard, and I found some guy online. He bought 3 or 4 of them and actually made a diorama out of them, like they're racing in a Mario Kart game. It's such a neat idea. But it's really interesting to see the level of creativity that's happening with 3D sculpting and 3D modeling. Actually, my guest next week, she runs I think it's Belle Delore Studios, and she did. I don't know if you've gone through my pictures or not, but I painted up. We were talking earlier about it. Transatlantis Games, the guys who make Too Thin Coats, the paints. They had a booth at LVO, and the chick who runs Belle Delore, she's good friends with the owner of Transatlantis. I think Bob, you said his name was. And she printed. They had her print out a bunch of her fantasy miniatures for the Too Thin Coats booth, so people could try the paints on them.
Well, that's cool. And
there was one in particular that I grabbed. I thought it was absolutely adorable. It's like her icon figure for the brand. His name's the Frog Pope. And I painted it up, and she's like, "Oh my God, this looks amazing. Can I share this?" I was like, "Have at it." But I'm really curious to talk to her to see what the 3D sculpting side of these things is like. It's really interesting hearing your stories. Because it's what I grew up with. You know, I actually think there's a certain level of charm and love and warmth that goes into hand sculpted miniatures like you make, and I do very much miss the proportions of the traditional style sculpted miniatures. The heads would always be a little bit bigger, the hands would be a little bit bigger, the weapons would always be a little bit bigger.
And, but it works. It works on the tabletop. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why they did it. So I think when they're more anatomically correct, it's a struggle to paint them. I was talking on the stand to people at the weekend. I was saying the more traditional sculpting, and because I come from being a figure painter, I know what a figure painter wants to see on a miniature. Yeah, I know when a figure is too busy and too much of a pain to paint. And what's the right amount. And I'm even like, while I'm sculpting, I'm already thinking of a color scheme for what I am sculpting. So I think sometimes when you're trying to like paint something that's anatomically correct, you can't even see the eyes, and it's like, Jesus,
very much
what am I painting? So I think that helps.
That's part of my issue with modern 40K miniatures is that, you know, they're all anatomically correct now, and like I'm not the biggest fan of Primaris Marines. I hate their hands because they're so small. And then looking at miniatures that are still 28 to 30 millimeter scale, like Sisters of Battle, Imperial Guard, stuff they haven't updated, even like the older Eldars that they were 3D sculpting. Everything is so friggin' tiny. It's just not fun to paint because it's so small. And you know, we were talking about painting styles earlier. When you see miniatures, you know, online, on your phone, on your computer monitor, like Instagram, Facebook, you know, when somebody knows what they're doing with photography, they get a nice high res photo of it, and you can zoom way in. And you know, people have gone to the extremes now of just everything is perfectly detailed and highlighted, but how much of that is the human eye actually going to be able to see and take in if you see this thing in person? I remember going into Warhammer World just to look at some of their latest releases, and I didn't realize how small these things were. I was like, geez, that's and it's plastic, and it's like really fine, and it would be daunting to paint it now. If I was a kid now, I'm not sure I'd be doing what I used to do. For figure painters, and this is why they give you washers and other ways of painting figures quickly, because it would be so tedious to paint it now. I will say that, like, the thing I have noticed about, the way that Games Workshop sculpts their miniatures versus 3D sculptors online and whatnot. GW is very particular and very good at, yeah, there's a lot of detail, but the detail is actually really, really like nicely fleshed out. It's nice and deep in the plastic. Louise, I swear to God, I cannot go a single podcast without mentioning her. Louise, Rogue Hobbies, she got into 3D sculpting. She bought a new iPad for Christmas, and she's starting to print out her own miniatures. Her boyfriend Rob, he's got a print farm in the studio, so she's able to print her Rascal Town stuff and all the stuff that she's sculpting now. And as she was sculpting, after she printed stuff, she's like, "Wow, I didn't realize this. I need to make my detail a lot deeper." And she's like, "It's really impressive what Games Workshop does because their detail is so clean and crisp on their plastic models."
Yeah,
and
I think it's hard to visualize it when you've got it on a computer screen.
Yeah,
you don't know how deep it has to be, and then when you get it printed out, it's like, ooh, it's a bit soft.
You know, I found with a lot of 3D sculptors, their models, like the 3D renders they have on the screen to preview, you know, what you're buying, they look really good, but
you have to look beyond that, though. That's the thing. You look at them and you think, yeah, that's still a little bit soft.
Well, it's like some of them, they're trying to cram too much detail into too small of a figure.
Oh, absolutely. Or there's like little writing and, you know, there's little pupils in there, and it's like, that's not going to transfer to like a 28mm miniature. And
I'm curious, like, I wonder if, I mean, we're just kind of at the dawn of 3D printing right now. And like I like resin printed models. I've got a couple I have a Saturnine Blood Angel Terminator that I painted up from Rogue Trader era back when there was the 3 prototypes. And it was the first resin model that I printed. I was really impressed with how well the detail from the metal model held up on this resin printed model. But I'm curious going forward what it's going to be like when the resolution of the prints gets better.
Yeah, I mean the early prints, if the resolution wasn't high enough, you could see the striation on the miniatures, and people would paint them, and it's like, dude, that looks horrendous. So yeah, I think the better they get, then, you know, it's, you know, maybe it's the future. But as you say, when you're printing this minute detail, you've also got to remember that a painter has to then paint it. Yeah. And you've got to be comfortable painting it. You've got to know the cutoff point about how much detail you put onto a miniature.
Oh, you made a really good point earlier, and this is like, you actually hit something that's really important to me. Like with what I've done over my career of running my own brand and my business is doing script. Like, I initially started my brand as an apparel brand, and I learned how to actually do the entire process from designing on my computer. I've been a designer my life, so I know how to deal with that. But going from design on the computer to separations, to printing out separations on films, to emulsifying the screen, to burning the screen, to setting up, you know, registering everything, print, tear down, and then blowing the screen out. So I've always held that in what I do with damn near everything. Like, I want to know the entire process, not just like, here's the finished product from somebody that you don't know how they did it. So, and what you just stated, and what I've always been big on, is with your miniatures, not only are you a sculptor, you're a painter. Yeah. So you're applying the, like, do I like the final product of this? Do I want to paint this?
Absolutely. So, and the proof is in the pudding, because, you know, every time I do a Kickstarter, I have to make the figure look the nicest it can be. Yeah. So I paint it. So every Kickstarter, I paint the miniatures. Yeah. I must have, 600 or more miniatures in the range, die-hard range. Oh, wow. And maybe 40 or 50 I haven't painted. Oh, wow. At the time. So yeah, there is a lot of painted figures.
Well, and that's gotta be a good learning point for you. And that what was just going through my head is like, is this fun to paint?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, what came first, the egg or the chicken? It's like, what came first, the painting or the sculpting? And they both feed from each other. I love to paint the figures. but then I'm also thinking about the next range of what I want to sculpt.
Yeah.
And then while you're sculpting them, you're thinking of the color scheme. And then when you get to finishing, and it's the Kickstarter, I've only got, 2 or 3 weeks before my next Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I've still got maybe 15 figures to paint, but I'm thinking about what I'm painting. I've got some cheeky goblins to do, and I've got some more orcs to paint.
Yeah.
And I just love doing it,
Yeah, talking about things that are fun to paint and not fun to paint. I'm working on the first edition metal Logan Grimnar right now for Olden Demon 25, and he is not fun to paint. He's a very poor sculpt, and the amount of extra work I've had to do because of the poor sculpting is really frustrating. But you grew up with him, I grew up with him. You go paint an RTB01 Sneaky Beaky, oh, those things are just a blast. Yeah, they're just fun.
Yeah, it's I've had to polish many a turd at Games Workshop before. Some of the miniature, good, because they said, right, we need these figures painting for the next White Dwarf. Can you? And some sculptors were more interesting than others to paint.
Oh, there's one big question I did want to ask you that I thought of, and I wrote it. It's off the top of my head. I just pull up my questions list so I know where to set chapters in this. There was something I was reading, and I've heard numerous times about old Games Workshop miniatures, where they said they sculpted them at 3 times their size, and then somehow scaled them down for the molds. Do you know what that's about?
For the plastics, they would. I think they were called 2-ups. I don't think they did 3-ups. So they'd make them either 2 or 3 times larger than they should be, and then they panograph them down. But that was mainly for the plastic stuff. Okay,
so that wasn't for metal; it was strictly for plastic.
Yeah. All metal figures were sculpted at the right size.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures in White Dwarf of Jess sculpting, and more. It was Allie and his brother, the Morrison twins, or who were the
Perry
twins?
Oh,
the Perry twins. Thank you. Yeah. So you had Jess Goodwin and the Perry twins, and I'd always see them. They were working on sculpting metal miniatures, but it was always in like green stuff.
Yeah, I saw the Perrys at the weekend as well. I love them to death. I always, when I was sculpting and learning to sculpt, I wanted the feel of the Perrys figures, the movement and the character that they produce, but I wanted the Jez Goodwin's kind of edge and like perfection. Yeah, and I try and put those two kind of sculpting styles together, which I have kind of done. Okay.
Yeah, there was. I remember there was. I think Louise interviewed Trish, and she was talking a lot about She prefers the old hand sculpted stuff, the more tactile feel of it, the casting in metal and making traditional metal models versus the newer plastic stuff. And she was going on, I think she worked in Forge World for a while, and she was talking about how she got to carry that over. She still got to do that stuff, but with resin.
Yeah, it's just amazing how they managed to carry on and go into 3D sculpting as well. Yeah, hats off to them. I see her every now and again. Did she retire from Games Workshop last year, or was it the year before?
I think she's been gone from GW for a while.
Could be. Time flies.
Yeah. Well, she's. I think she mentioned that I think Forge World was kind of her last stop, and she kind of didn't like what it turned into.
Yeah. I think there's only a few of them left now. I bumped into Jez. It was Colin Dixon's Wake, probably 2 years ago now. And I bumped into Jez for the first time in a long time, and we got chatting about stuff. And I think he only consults now, and I can't remember the last time he probably touched putty, probably early 2000s maybe. I don't think he went to 3D sculpting. Yeah. But yeah, certainly Ali and Trish with 3D sculpting.
it just popped into my head and dawned on me. It's really amazing how, talking to you, hearing all these battle stories, talking to Addy, hearing all of his stories, and through my own experience as the consumer on the opposite side of what you guys were involved in, how still to this day we're all so still involved in this. Like, I took a 12-year hiatus from painting, but I always really liked Warhammer stuff and Space Marines and painting. I just didn't get back into it, but it's strange how there's so much art and creativity and I don't know, depth to doing everything that we do with these silly little army men.
I know, exactly.
And how it's
ending that kind of reality, isn't it? Really, it's like just continuing.
Yeah, I think you're what, in your late 40s, early 50s?
God bless you. 53. So yeah, I was a 71.
You got 10 years on me then.
Yeah.
So when I found, well, you were 15, 16 when you started there, and my understanding was you actually went away to university for a couple of years and then came back.
When I left school, I had a couple of jobs, and then when I was 17, I joined straight to Games Workshop. So I never did uni or college or anything.
Okay, I don't know where I got that from. I thought you'd left for a little bit, came back, and then basically what Ansel and McVeigh said, you've always got a spot here. You left for like a year or two that came back, but I guess that's not right. But so when I discovered you were in that fantasy miniatures book. You in your late teens, and when I bought that book, I was in my early teens, so you were in your 20s by the time I got into this stuff.
Yeah. It's strange how you keep seeing some of the old painted figures come out.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me how this one thing has stuck with me for my entire life, and all these people that I've talked to, including you. It's the special thing in their lives, and it's still there, and it's still so prominent. And, you can walk away from it for a little while and then come back and just discover all kinds of new stuff, or maybe you never even left in the first place.
Well, I mean, it must have etched itself on my psyche, because every now and again I do have a dream that I am back there.
You're like,
I've continued, or I think the last one was only about a few months ago, and I remember, I'm sat at a studio, but it's not the same studio. But it seems familiar, and Mike's there, and we're painting. They've accepted me back in, like the Matrix. They've put me back in the machine. And I'm like, this is weird. And then you wake up.
I had an odd dream like that the other night. It was, for some odd reason, my parents were having a party at their house. My dad died 3 years ago. My mom, she's living in England right now. She's British, and but it was in recent times, and my dad was alive. They still had their house that they bought in 2000, and my gal that I'm with now, we went to high school together. We reconnected 2 years ago, and she's the one I plan on spending the rest of my life with. But for some odd reason, she wasn't there, but her car was parked in my parents' bedroom. And my dad's like, can you get Pepper's car out of our bedroom? And I'm like, sure. And I started the car up. She has this hybrid Hyundai, and I couldn't maneuver it because it had like 1,000 horsepower. Anytime I touched the gas, it just jolted forward. But
further into the house.
Yeah, I woke up and I'm like, what the hell was that? And like my best friend and all his brothers were there. So yeah, those kind of dreams are just kind of weird.
It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit strange.
Your brain telling you something.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a whole bunch of fun conversations about random stuff, and I wanted to dive into your Instagram feed because you've got a lot of really cool things in there. So let me pull up my browser window so I can actually interact with this. And there's the little gal that had curlers in her hair just a minute ago.
No.
So
this was from this weekend. Salute.
What's that?
This was from the weekend. We just did a Salute in London.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw your booth setup. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it worked really well this year. It was a bit more open. Yeah, I think we might double the size of it next year if it went really well.
So diving into it, I'm assuming these are some of your orcs, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
These will be the ones coming out at the end of April for the next Kickstarter.
And you sculpted all these?
Yes.
Oh,
yep,
wow.
Sculpted and painted.
Yeah, these are really impressive. I like how I'm sure fans of Old Hammer will really dig these. I like how you have the old, on 3 of them, you got the old goblin green skin.
Absolutely. Well, I did the same thing with my Urakin, which are like frogmen. You could call them slan, but I'd call them Urakin.
Yeah, slan. Yeah.
Yeah, they. I just say the color schemes of frogs. There's so many different color schemes in nature. That why limit yourself to green?
Yeah.
Or orange. So with just like the slan or Urakin, I decided to just do different colors because that's what I was into. And the same with diehards orcs. They basically come from a planet. So you'll have there'll be some in the desert, there'll be some in the forest, some in the swamps, and they'll have different color schemes for the skin colors will be different. So I thought, instead of just limiting myself to like a bright green or an orc brown, I just played with it, and I think the people like it when they see them.
The orc on the right, is his skin, is that woodland, the old woodland green?
That was what have we got? We have mixed a contrast warp lightning.
So it's a modern color,
a goblin green. Yes, I basically, it was a white primer, and then I washed the green down as much as possible, and then layered it.
Oh, okay.
And then brought some highlights back up on afterwards, just to like pop the top part.
It's kind of funny. You said layering. I haven't actually incorporated that into my vocabulary for painting yet, because I never really considered that layering the way that we grew up painting. It was just the base coat and highlighted up.
Yeah. My style has changed so much over the years, and I absorb new technologies of paint, and I go, well, yeah, I can use that. And it's meant to be a glaze or an ink wash, but then I just add paint into it, and I'll just use it to get a richer green from it.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't really tried that the method of laying down contrast and then layering over it.
Yeah, but it's literally it's mixing in ink and paint together, and then watering it down and going over a white primer, and just seeing how it goes, and just adding the next layer once it's dry, adding it, making it deeper.
I'll have to try that on an orc sometime. Like if you haven't noticed, I primarily paint Space Marines just because I like Space Marines. But
who doesn't?
I'll have to. Yeah, that I don't think that painting method really works all that well for Space Marines, given how flat their armor panels are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this really works nicely with like muscles and fingers and stuff. So.
Yeah. We were talking earlier. There was one I really wanted to bring up. We were talking about the Warzone. And these are some of your old Warzone models. Yes,
painted. Yes, I think Phil Lewis did the undead chap at the front, and then the blue skin guy. Sorry, I don't know the names. That was Kev Adams, and then the Mishima, the Japanese guys, was Mark Coppleston.
Okay, I think these were these second edition models.
I think they were first.
Oh, really?
They were still first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been ages since I looked at the rule book where all the miniatures were displayed. But I remember at the time, I think when the rule book came out, not all of the miniatures have been sculpted yet. So I think I don't remember seeing the Mishima in the rule book that I had. There was hand drawn artwork, but I remember there being like a bunch of hand drawn artwork, and then models were missing from particular pages. And then as the game went on, they were releasing more models based upon the stuff from the rule book. So I think the Mishima weren't in there yet. But I remember that big blue dude being in there. I thought that was one hell of a miniature. I was like, God, that guy's huge.
Yeah. Kev Adams does some really nice monsters and stuff.
Now it'd be like you stick him next to a Primaris Marine and he'd look tiny. I cannot believe how big Space Marines and Terminators have gotten. I'm sorry. The one bad thing about this software is when I open up one of your pictures and I click off it, it'll shoot back up to the top of the page again.
Yeah.
So I was eyeballing these as I was digging through your Instagram. These are some of your stuff too, right?
Yes. I've sculpted and painted all of them. The middle woman was by Patrick Keith.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes during the Kickstarters, I get a guest sculptor to come in and sculpt something for me. So he did a lovely job on that. I think he's pretty much all 3D sculpting now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was about to say, looking at her, it didn't look quite like your style. She seems very anime influenced.
Yeah, definitely a different character. But,
there was one guest I was talking to, and we had to acknowledge that the Tau actually existed. And we were talking about it a little bit, and I was like, yeah, the whole reason GW incorporated the Tau was because at the time, like in the early 2000s, anime was huge, and Games Workshop wanted in on that, so they created the Tau as like the answer to like Mecha and Gundam and anime stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
seen lots of memes of that kind of stuff. It's always funny.
I've talked to a few younger kids about that, and they get all really frustrated and upset. And like, well, they were just trying to cash in on something, man. What do you want?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this little guy was awesome.
Yeah, Tweaky. I just a lot of my own stuff. If I'm not getting it concepted, I'll just come up with an idea and I'll think about it. And this wasn't converted at all, so this was a brand new sculpt that I did.
Oh, okay.
And I'm always using Pinterest to get ideas for maybe droid heads or bodies or guns and stuff. He was fun as well.
He actually he reminds me of something from the 80s. Did you ever read the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics?
No, I'm aware of them and I've seen the cartoons years ago, but no.
In the original Eastman and Laird comics, they had a character named Fugitoid, and this really reminds me of Fugitoid in a lot of ways.
Very cool.
Like he had
go ahead. A lot of that. The ball droid part. That's of another conversion. So I've already done some droids that were just balls, and that was a conversion. It's just mashing, finding what I've got and saying, what can I make from this now?
And these are all done with Citadel paints.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All Citadel paints.
Yeah.
I was explaining one at the weekend how I do my black. And it's like a teal. So I mix, my base color will be black, and then I'll start mixing a teal paint in with the black.
Okay.
So it doesn't get too powdery.
Yeah.
So if you use white straight with black, it deadens the color.
Yeah.
Whereas you lose a bit of blue, and then midway through this kind of color scheme, you then start adding white towards the end.
Yeah, it's actually neat to see that. Like you guys were doing that back in the late 80s and early 90s, especially when you kind of established the paint scheme and for second edition. It was rare to see black being highlighted up with pure white. You guys had always mixed in kind of like a Space Wolf gray or a blue gray, and it's actually neat to see that technique still exists to this day. Yeah.
I mean the Reapers, the Aspect Warriors. That's the same kind of way I took up the black on those.
I like your Orc Shaman. This is cool.
Yeah, he's going to be available in the next Kickstarter as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a brand new sculpt as well. That wasn't converted at all. But...
Oh, I just noticed his base. That's really, I like the colors you've got going down here.
Yeah. I also make my own bases as well that sell on the website. So I'll the difference to make mine different from everyone else's, because I'm only hand pouring, and I don't sell that many of them. But what I do is I clean them up and I prime them. So whenever someone buys a set of bases from me, then all they have to do is paint it.
What are you making the bases out
skulls,
of?
Well, the skulls are from Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Those are, the box of 1,000 skulls or whatever.
That is like one of the best things they ever brought out.
Absolutely. Someone told me it's like there's a box of skulls from Games. I was like, dude, I'm on it.
Yeah.
When they're in a bolt, I'm still using them. They'll see me out. I think,
Yeah, I've only used a handful of mine, and I've still got at least a couple hundred of them left in the box.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What do you
the human skulls are the best ones, though.
Oh yeah.
Some of the other ones are a bit meh.
What do you make the bases out of?
I just pour them, so it's
I mean, are they metal or are they resin?
It's resin. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll just pour the resin. Yeah, 2-part resin mixed.
Are you doing that whole like I watch a lot of when Auntie Rona came and visited me in December of 21. I was out for like 3 weeks, and I spent a lot of time watching like scale modeler videos. Mm-hmm. And it seems like everybody's favorite part is the resin pour for water. With your resin, do you actually vacuum out the bubbles?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a single piece.
Or is that really only for clear resin?
I don't think so. Because it's there's not that much grippiness in the mold. I just use a chopstick to just like push out any bubbles that are in some of the detail.
Okay.
And usually it's fine.
There was one that just hit me in the feels.
That was one of the latest figures for the Never-Ending diorama. I think that was the last one I painted for it, which was towards the end of last year. This year.
Darren Latham painted up one of these for Olden Demon last year, and I'm just like, I hate you so much. Well, and like it's hard to get the one thing that I really just bugs the crap out of me from I'd say like late Rogue Trader and even into like early middle second edition was finding clean metal models in their sprues. You really had to go digging like on the rack sometimes, and yours here and then the one Latham painted up. I like these look like they were pristine molding or pristine production molds. Where
they've sat in a cardboard box since 93, I guess. So they've never been rattled around. They've not been eBayed, and you get them and the noses are all smushed. They've just been left on a shelf.
Well, usually the biggest problem was like the actual casting. The dowels and you could tell it was a late mold when the dowels started slipping and half the mold, half the miniature was cast off. Yeah. And hence, like what I was saying, you got to go digging through the racks of the blister packs to find the ones that are in really good shape as opposed to the ones that are miscast. It's like, ugh. Listening to Newhammer kids talk about, I hate cleaning mold lines and it's like, have you ever tried to clean a miscasted metal model? No, then stop.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes you 5 minutes to clean the whole model. You get a miscast metal model. You got to break out the Dremel. You got to break out green stuff.
Yeah, get the scalpel on it.
Yeah. A whole day's worth of work just to have one model that's ready for painting. Ugh.
Yeah.
Actually, the beakies that I painted up, I went through and all three of those models and all the arms and backpacks. I missed a few spots in the backpacks I was pissed off about, but I spent a good evening just going through every single model with X-Acto, cleaning off every single mold line I could find. And I'm just sitting there.
You still miss a little bit, and then you prime it, and it's like, how did I miss that?
Yeah. Well, at least when it's mostly primed, if you scrape off the mold line, you can still paint over it, and you're not going to really see that that blob that you just scraped off. Mm-hmm. And this guy, this looks like a mix of like old blue gray and kind of modern Fenrisian gray with white.
It's still the blue gray that I had.
Oh, okay.
I just added white to it, took it up.
Yeah, it's actually really cool to see that like you still do the traditional Grim Bright paint style where you've got really like the large clean gradations, and like the black lining and just the simplicity of it all. It's just it's very easy to look at. And you know,
I mean, with something that's got such a large area of blue, that's the first color I use. So I'll take that all the way up to white.
Yeah.
And then I'll go through and start blacking out all the other areas that will be the metal or black rubber. And then I'll just paint those individually up.
Oh, it kind of amazes me in modern times to see people painting metallics and they don't undercoat them in black.
Yeah, that's crazy. You can also visualize it better when you've actually blacked it out.
Yeah. No, I see.
You just decide what it's going to be. So, I mean, sometimes I come to a figure and I'm midway through painting and I suddenly either a mistake or something. It's like, you know what? I'm going to paint it that color. And a totally different day, I would have painted it something completely different. It just, sometimes you just leave your mind open and you just go where the figure wants.
It just popped into my head. One thing I'm excuse me, totally amazed about with your miniatures from second edition was that you like on the, let's say the Space Wolves, like on the box art, I didn't notice this until recently. You actually hand painted all the chapter badges.
Yeah. It was pre some of the transfers that we got.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff had to be hand painted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the big diorama that I did with the Deathwing, that's all hand painting. That was way before we had transfers.
I mean, looking at that, just like how consistent you were with the placement and the size of every single Space Wolf badge on their the shoulder pad. I was insanely impressed when just recently when I figured out that it was all hand painted. I think I read something from, it was you or McVeigh talking about how when you guys were painting up all the second edition armies, the transfers weren't ready yet. And like earlier in our conversation, I don't know how this was missed, but like we were talking about the second edition arms, how you had to shave down the weapon and the shoulder pad to get the bolter to sit right. I don't know how this was missed. It was like a lot of the second edition transfers were too big.
Yeah.
Like the Deathwing logo, it was bigger than the shoulder pad. I'm like, how did you not test this? These are just screen printed. It is not hard. Crazy. Like if you would have shrunk it down 25%, it would have been perfect. But nope. This old guy, this old paladin.
Yeah, that was a conversion. It was so the top half is a completely different figure to the bottom half. I've still got some more. That was the only one I've painted up, and I've got another maybe 4 or 5 in a box. And I was going to have them as a whole unit. But yeah, I just fiddled around with it.
These things are just so
I was always converting things, so
yeah,
just to make it look different. And that's how I went on to do my own sculpts.
Yeah, 80 mentioned something on the show that he was big into conversion work too, and he was talking about how with his conversions he always worked to do things that look like they were production based. And I'm with all these guys, I know the miniatures they were, but this looks all of these look like something you could have ordered at the same time or at that particular point in time.
Yeah. But it also, Games Workshop, certainly when Brian was in charge, everything had to be very much flat so they could cast it as many times as possible before the mold died.
Yeah.
And I wanted more movement in there, and I always wanted to like you wouldn't be able to cast that in one piece.
Oh, that'd be a thick mold.
Yeah.
Well, no, you'd have to
the
arm.
The way he's out.
Yeah, I just realized that arm would have to be a separate piece.
Yeah.
No, there was. Speaking of Eldar, I discovered this morning. I don't know how I missed this. Where is it? Come on! Oh, I this is the first time I talked to you. that thing and you sculpted that.
Yes.
That thing is so cool.
Yeah, I love making that. That's a resin figure as well.
Oh, really?
And it's on sale on the website.
I might have to go buy one of those.
When I was in America, and Chris Bledsoe, he was into battle chasers, and that was very much inspired by battle chasers back in, must have been the 90s, I guess, when the comic came out. It was just like this kind of goopy creature that just like amalgamates itself from bones and carcasses and just becomes bigger and bigger.
It reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's almost like a H.R. Giger-esque influence in it too.
Yeah, just the way that the black goop is, its form, its structure is taken from the bones and the carcasses that it pulls together. And then it just goes out and seeks more people and victims to add to it.
I think the Giger-esque influence to me is you have the rib cages, and then you've got patterning in the goop. And I think he initially started college for industrial design. So you see a lot of, if you learn to recognize certain aspects of industrial design, you actually see a lot of industrial design in his work. And that the rib cages and the goopy stuff near the mouth, and the ridges on the stuff back here. Oh, you can't see my mouse pointer. I keep forgetting that. But yeah, very much. There's a lot of industrial design influence sort of in your repeated textures.
And mouths within mouths.
Yeah.
That's obviously a lot alien.
How long did it take you to paint this?
I think a day, maybe just over a day.
Good God.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys were able to do that when you were on the Eavy Metal team, like be able to bang out an entire Space Marine or something like this in a day. It's like, that would take me like 3 or 4 days.
I think I was talking to Andy Craig, and he was like trying to remind me of how many figures we had to get painted. And if there was a rush on, we had to like work weekends and overtime and stuff. And I was like, I can't remember. I must have like killed some brain cells in me just to be able to do it.
Actually, there was one question I forgot to ask you earlier, and you just me being an art director and working in art departments, one big thing I wanted to ask was, how did painting for the Eavy Metal staff work? Were you given random miniatures to paint, or were you assigned minis based on your strengths?
I think a bit of both. I think we could cherry pick, certainly towards the end. We could cherry pick maybe a faction or a chapter. So I loved doing the Space Wolves, so I got to do more of the Space Wolves. And then you would, because then there's consistency with the actual painting as well.
Okay.
So I mean, I liked Ultramarines as well. The blue was always a bit of a bugger to get right, because it's like a weird color that you can't quite tell whether you're taking it up properly. And the Blood Angels, I was having a joke with John Blanche because I used to say it was orange, and he was like, "No, it's not. It's red." I'm like, "It's orange.
It's orange."
Vermilion. I was like, "Okay, you win."
Well, I mean, initially, like the Blood Angels, the way they were painted was like you based them with terracotta and you highlighted up from there. And then when you guys went to second edition, you based them with blood red and then highlighted them up with Blood Angels orange, and then I think fiery orange at the time.
Yeah.
So
it was another tricky color to take up, because I mean, you really had to get the right mix between yellow and white to get that red to move.
Yeah. Well, and you had to be careful too, because like there were certain colors that interact with red if you're using red as your base coat and highlighting up. In modern times, it's not so much anymore, but back then it was like you had to be careful because red would go pink.
Yeah.
And for Blood Angels, you did not want pink.
So you wouldn't be adding enough yellow. So then,
but
then if you add too much yellow, and then if you've I mean, we don't, and I still don't, but I see this more recently where they'll sell you a whole load of paint, so you have to use this color and then you use this color and then you highlight with this color. And it's like back in the day, and still now, I just use like 2 or 3 paints, and I just keep blending them in to each other. Well, so if you want to blend red, you'll just mix yellow and white together and then take it up to white.
That's a common thing that's come up on the show that I talk about a lot. Is I think the current system for painting, they've built in the triad system where you want to paint a Blood Angel here, or I'm sorry, you want to paint an Ultramarine. Here's the 5 colors you use for the armor, and you don't even have to mix them. You just step them. And
exactly. It's a way of painting, selling more paints.
Well, and it's also for entry level painters, people who don't have an artistic background or who are just getting into it. It's an excellent method in that it's a great beginner method where you've got it all laid out for you. But as time goes on, you learn to mix and blend your paints. But I mean, you and I and every other old hammer person that got into this in the 90s and the 80s, we didn't have that. We just had to learn how to mix our paints.
Yeah, exactly. But then you learn what colors make what colors. And then you can look at this figure and you go, okay, I'll use this blue and this white and this blue. And and you'll roughly work out how to make that same color. Yeah.
I think the worst color to work with to this day is brown.
Yeah, it can be a little bit tricky, and that's why I use the ink and the brown that I've got, and then just take it up. I might use a little bit of black in there to get a different darker brown. But
I'm getting yelled at right now. Hang on a second. Come here. Let go of the carpet. Ugh. Gizmo's making a guest appearance.
Hey, how you doing?
It's his midday waking up bugging me time, and I think he's gonna go back to sleep. Okay, go away. Go over there.
I get the same thing. We've got my wife's cat, Lulu. She comes in and just meows at me, and if I ignore her, there's a little paw comes up and taps my elbow. And it's like, okay, you need food? Okay, yeah, you're asking.
Yeah, he does that with me every night at 9 o'clock for his cat treats.
Right. Okay, yes.
I've got next to my paint. He's taken to where my painting desk is in my studio here. I've got my box of Warhammer crap, like your pile of shame of stuff that you need to paint in there, and all my modeling supplies. But he hops up on that and then puts his paws up on my desk, pokes his head over, looks at me and meows, and then he'll hit my hand. It's like, all right, fine, I'll give you treats. But back to this. This was I ran across this. I don't know how I never saw this before. This Titan is amazing.
I don't know whether it was ever in White Dwarf, but it was painted around that time, just before I left.
93.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've got photos of it using the Games Workshop cameras that we had.
Oh, okay.
Back when it used to be film and not digital.
Yeah. Oh, 80 and I went into that a whole hell of a lot. I used to work for a film processing company here in town, but we had a digital department, so I was working in that for design work. And we were just swapping stories about how all this stuff used to be on film, how you had to get the proof sheet and go at it with a loop, and but this thing is amazing. Like I like the conversion work a lot that you did on the knee, so his leg is raised.
Yeah. And again, this was early stages of me learning to sculpt and stuff, and it helped. I guess I had to bend his foot over as well. So that
I just noticed his toes going over the rock.
Yeah, it was good. I just wanted him to be like a headhunter, so he's collected all these Titan heads.
Yeah,
as like trophies.
And just for the new Hammer kids watching, this is an actual metal model.
Yeah. But this was after the transfers were released, so I was using a lot of the Eldar transfers on there.
And you just go full ham with them instead of having to sit there and paint them each one for like an hour.
Absolutely.
God.
I think it was probably around the same time they were just releasing these new transfers.
I suppose once you kind of get the hang of whatever chapter you're painting, painting on the chapter badges, it kind of gets a little bit easier. I took the old. I'm a big fan of the Mentor Legion, and I don't like the second edition and up Mentor Legion icon of being that red griffin head that they came up with. But I like the Rogue Trader one where it was an owl, but I didn't like how it was red and orange and yellow, so I kind of redesigned it and updated it so the owl head's a little bit more fleshed out, and it's green, and it's two different color greens to match the armor, and because it's a mirrored logo, it's somewhat easy for me to paint when I start out by dotting where I want to make the edges of the face and the beak, connect everything with bent lines, connect the top of the head, and kind of get everything perfect, and then paint everything on the inside of the outlet. I'll just do the whole shape in black and then paint the inside of it. I've done 3 of them now, so it's gotten a lot easier. But you painting Space Wolf badges, God, what 10, 25? You did at least the 25 for the squads, so the Blood Claws, the Long Fangs, and the Grey Hunters.
Mhm.
I'm sure after like the fifth one, you're like, oh God, shoot me.
I guess once you've done it all in one go, then yeah, you just do it by rote.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then
so
you getting to this where you had all the transfers, you're like, oh,
yeah, this
well,
is easy. Where am I going to slap this? Oh yeah, that'll fit on that weapon. Yeah.
why didn't I have these 6 months ago? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy was that is insanely impressive. Also, I noticed through your miniatures that you have some Judge Dredd stuff in here. Is that you or is that another line?
That could have been WizKids. But I also did about 70 figures for Foundry. They had the license, or at least an agreement with 2000 AD.
Yeah, there we go. That's a 2000 AD figure, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Foundry. Yeah, that's one of my favorite paintings from that time, because I even put freckles on there as well.
Yeah, that thing's clean.
Yeah.
I find that I'm jealous of the way you painted his I don't know, leather or spandex or whatever that is. I found
it's like a rubber suit, isn't it?
I found painting that stuff is a real pain.
Yeah, that was a nice paint job, and I got the skin tone quite nicely done as well.
Yeah, that's not old bronze flesh, is it?
No, there'll be some red in there and some kind of brown, and then probably some kind of human flesh kind of color, and then took it up to white.
Yeah,
I think.
I like his mohawk hair. It's very Space Wolfy.
Yeah, Chopper. I loved 2000 AD. It's influenced a lot of stuff that I do now. I was a kid when I was collecting those comics.
Yeah, my aunt used to send me 2000 AD graphic novels and then stuff from that particular universe. And one of the books she sent me from 2000, she's part of 2000 AD, was Durham Red. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, Strontium Dog Vampire. Yeah,
I really liked her graphic novel. I thought the artwork was fantastic.
Yeah, I did a sculpt for Foundry with her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you know if you have it on your Instagram?
I don't think I do.
No.
I've not painted it either.
And
Kevin Dallimore has painted the version for Foundry, but they don't have the license anymore. That is pre
cast molds.
Yes, so that's a master mold.
Oh, okay.
So those are all originals. So there'll be another piece on top, and then that'll be heated and pressed.
So basically you sculpt the miniatures, and then you make the master mold like this, and then you make a single casting from the master, and then make production molds based on those castings?
Yeah, you'll spin that master mold, say 3 times, to get 3 castings of the same figure. Okay. And then that will go into a production mold, so then there'll be 3 of that same figure on that mold. Okay. And, you can see the ones that are pure grey are the bits that are fresh putty. Oh, okay. And the ones that are discoloured, they've already been pressed once before. The black rubber, it discolours the grey, so you'll see that those other ones have already been pressed, and anything that's grey on that figure is brand new sculpt, and then it's converted and it goes into the mold again. Oh, okay. That's really cool how all this works, and like learning a whole new method of molding and casting. Yeah. And you are the man to ask about this. We can. I want to pull up. There was one little guy that I wanted to pull up, and then I have to wrap this up. I've got to go check out my gal's kid's car. There's something wrong with it. Where did he go? As Louise would say, he's a little guy. Actually, no, she doesn't really have an accent. She did a whole video about her accent. They're like, "Why do you have an American accent?" She's like, "I don't know. It's just my accent." But the funny thing is, when she yells, her Scottish accent comes out. I saw him 5-10. No, that was like 2 hours ago. Where is he? He was right in the middle. Is he here somewhere? Yeah, I was digging. I went through your entire list of stuff. I was really impressed with everything you've painted up. I've got so much more to put up there. I'm drip feed it. Certainly stuff from the old days. I just take photos and I'll drip feed some more of that. No, it wasn't him. Oh, there's. I like this chick. I thought this was cool. Kev White did the girl.
Oh, okay.
And I did the bike. That was his last sculpt before he joined Games Workshop again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's complete 3D now.
Okay, there he is. That guy's awesome.
He's little as well. He's only about 15 mil tall, I think.
Do you still make him?
Yeah, he's in the shop. Yeah, he's a lovely little character. When I do Kickstarters, I'll do 5 familiars, just little characters, just as like giveaways for the higher bidders or things that it's only about £4.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to order a bunch of stuff from you just so you can throw it all in one box, because I think shipping from the UK right now, like a smaller box for like a single mini, is about $25 to $30.
Right. Yeah,
it's like 18 to 20 quid.
If I can get them in, if you can get them into a large letter box, it's a lot cheaper. If it goes up to a small parcel, it doubles in price.
Yeah.
But I usually only charge about £10 to £15.
Okay.
Depending on what's going to America, and as long as it's under 750 grams, it goes as a large letter. Yeah,
most of the stuff I buy off eBay from England, most of it was like between like 15 to 18 quid for shipping. So I think that equated out to about 22 to $24. There was actually a couple miniatures I bought. The shipping was more than the miniature. And the real kicker was I bought multiple miniatures from one seller, and he wouldn't refund the shipping price. He put them all in one box, but wouldn't like, oh, hey, let me give you like 10 quid back. That'd be great. Instead he's like, I'm going to keep it all. I'm like,
that's cheeky.
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna have to order some stuff from you coming up here. But let's wrap this up for the day, the evening for you. Yeah. And with the last part of the show, this is the shout out section. So is there anybody you'd like to give shout outs to?
Myself? diehardminiatures.com. Come and see us. Check out what's on the website. We've got a discount at the moment, although it's probably going to go when you air this.
You can make a discount code for the episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Something like Grumpy 10.
There we go.
We'll have Grumpy 10, and then tell me when it airs, and I'll put it on the website. Okay, definitely. Yeah, check us out on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well.
I will link. I'll put links to your Die Hard stuff in the description below. Absolutely, excellent. I think that's it, really. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It was an absolute honor to talk with you, and get to ask you a bunch of questions you probably answered a million times. I don't mind. I mean, every interview I do, it's been over the last couple of years. It's been more and more people have been interested, and it's just nice to go back over the old days and remember things that are, back in the mists of time. Yeah, it's you and 80 seem to. You and 80 seem to speak very fondly of what you guys did, and the 80s and 90s and 2000s. So it's always a joy to hear what you guys were up to and your journeys through up until where you are now. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's made me the person I am today. A starving artist, as my wife would tell me. But I just love the industry, and I love creating. Yeah. Whether it's painting or sculpting. So I got rid of the starving part of artists from my vocabulary 13 years ago because of the way, kind of what people say and the way they speak about the world does actually affect your perception of what you do in the world itself. And I stopped doing I stopped saying starving artist, and I started saying successful artist or professional artist. I started looking at things differently, and things started coming to me differently. So, and like I've thought about with OldGrumpyWolf, this is what I'm trying to do full time now. And I get freaked out at times where I'm like, I'm not making any money yet, but I'm like, no, I'm succeeding at this a lot faster than I did with my previous business. That absolutely taking all of what I learned over 18 years and applying it to this. And it's like, about a year or two, I'm decent with my money management. In a year or two, it'll start making money, and but the greatest part is I get to be an artist again and make things.
It makes you happy.
Yeah. And making things makes me happy. And, you know, when you're happy doing something, you tend to be a lot more successful at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do something you love.
So, okay, I'm going to close this up now, go to my ending thing, and I need to keep track of my time for it. So let's go 45. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. There are two things here. There's probably a podcast and a painting tutorial. So if you want to check those out and have a listen, please feel free to. If you would, like, subscribe, and share YouTube stuff. And until the next one, I will talk to you guys in a bit. And yeah,